think just for starters, I would like to go back to Jacques Maritain's book, Introduction to Philosophy. And just to recall some basic truths, I think Maritain's Introduction to Philosophy and Joseph Pieper's Leisure, the Basis of Culture would be fine beginning points or reference points to know what the fullness of philosophic wisdom is. In Maritain's book, Introduction to Philosophy, he has a series of conclusions defining what philosophy is. I'd just like to read some of these, and then we'll start to situate what the challenges of modern philosophy are. Maritain says as his first conclusion that philosophy is the science which by the natural light of reason studies the first causes or highest principles of all things. In other words, the science of things in their first causes, insofar as these belong to the natural order. The importance of philosophy, then, is that it uses reason. It draws on human experience. It tries to make sense out of our life and experience and put these into intelligible principles, patterns, and various propositions about important things. Now, traditionally, philosophy has been divided into three parts. The logic, which is the introduction to philosophy, a study of method, as the moderns will come to call it. It's concerned about the mind's grasp of truth. The second part is theoretical or speculative philosophy. It studies the being of things, and I know you have been studying philosophy of nature, philosophical anthropology, metaphysics, philosophy of religion, all those wonderful courses that ICU has lined up for you. And third is practical philosophy, which studies the good of human acts. It includes ethics and political philosophy primarily. Now we'll see that modern philosophy does essentially redefine all three branches of philosophy. That's why I'd like to move on to a third conclusion of Maritain's in his book. It's conclusion 3, which is that theology, or the science of God as he's been made known by revelation, is superior to philosophy. Philosophy is subject to it neither in its premise or its methods, but in its conclusions, over which theology exercises a control, a negative rule of philosophy. We will take our bearings by our faith, but faith won't tell us where the fallacy of the argument is. Faith won't tell us why this has been badly conceptualized. That is the task of the philosopher. So what is modern philosophy? And how can we start out this journey? And why should we start out the journey of studying these great minds in the centuries from the 16th to the 18th century? What we will define as modern now, we will locate starting with the end of the 15th century with Machiavelli and Copernicus, moving through Bacon, Descartes, Hobbes, Pascal, Locke, Spinoza, Hume, Rousseau, and Kant. This is a lot of philosophy to take in. It is a new way of thinking, and it's something that we will do our best to hit the highlights and look at some key text and hopefully get your interest up to go back and read some of these texts, which are, I must say, at times very dense and impenetrable. It is one of the great things about Aristotle as the philosopher of common sense that although he's not easy, you can get a foothold in Aristotle. You can see the basic experience or ideas and human phenomenon, natural phenomenon to which he refers. With the moderns, on the other hand, you do have these new ways of conceptualizing, at times arbitrary and abstract, and it is difficult to make your way through them. But I hope with some of the keys I'll provide you, you can start to make sense of these important thinkers. Now, one reason we need to study well the moderns is that the modern philosophers do define the culture in which we live. They do define the historical struggle and point at which we find ourselves. I think maybe one good point of orientation to begin with is to think about the Vatican Council's pastoral constitution on the church in the modern world. The very title shows the importance of understanding our situation. As much as we take for our mentor, Thomas Aquinas, and know the great synthesis that he achieved, in which we know is a living Thomism, we must understand the historical situation and intellectual challenges in which we live. I'm going to read to you some of the pastoral constitution on the church in the modern world. This is from the opening section. It says, the Council Fathers say that the Council yearns to explain to everyone how to conceive of the presence and activity of the Church in the world today. Therefore, the Council focuses its attention on the world of men, the world which is the theater of man's history, the air of his energies, his tragedies, his triumphs. To carry out this task, the Council Fathers say, they must scrutinize the signs of the times. That phrase, which has been abused by some, has a good meaning, that the signs of the times indicate what we are dealing with. And as the Council Fathers say, not to reduce the gospel to modern philosophy or the modern mind, but to interpret them in light of the gospel. But we've got to look at these signs. Basically, I think the Council Fathers do hit the core that I will elaborate for you as to what modern philosophy is all about and what its effects are. Let me read on. It says, today the human race is involved in a new stage of history. Profound and rapid changes are spreading by degrees around the world, triggered by the intelligence and creative energies of man. These changes recoil upon him. We can speak of a cultural and social transformation, a crisis, because this transformation has brought serious difficulties in its wake. Thus, while man extends his power in every direction, he does not always succeed in subjecting it to his own welfare. That will be one of the keys of modern philosophy, which the Council Fathers recognize, is this great unleashing of human power. A vision that begins with these moderns, Bacon and Descartes. We will revisit those first stirrings of the possibility of the increase in human power and how it was first conceived and the problems in how it was conceived, and see how we can better interpret it. For example, the Council Fathers do go on to say many of our contemporaries are kept from accurately identifying permanent values and adjusting to these fresh discoveries. As a result, buffeted between hope and anxiety, and pressing one another with questions about the present course of events, they are burdened down with uneasiness. They're looking for answers. Again, here is where the Catholic faith will help us, and how understanding modern philosophy will help us be more effective witnesses and apostles.